opportunities with this new strategic plan to kind of carry forth on some of the things that we are looking at for priorities in the community, and ably being handled through Justin Sharton, our superintendent of the Natural Areas and Trails Division. So I am going to turn it now over to whoever is next. I don't know if the consultants are going to be speaking or Justin, but I appreciate everybody's attendance. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, and it really is great to see so many friendly, familiar faces. And if you're joining for the first time, we appreciate you coming as well, and you're interested in natural areas and trails. Let me share what the evening looks like. We want to use your time well, and that means that we're going to start with a quick background and introduction. I'll give you an overview of the plan, and then we're going to share with you some of the goals and objectives, the direction the plan is moving. And because this is a strategic plan, a 5-year plan, we're going to focus on action items that can come out of it. Throughout the meeting, there'll be a number of polls, opportunities for you to weigh in statistically as well as in the chat. So on the next slide, you'll see that we would like you, because we've got a large group, to, in general, keep yourself on mute. Raise your hand using the hand icon under participants, and that way we'll know to call on you. You can also enter questions at any point through the chat box, and we'll be answering those. We would like to hit the record button on this so that anyone who couldn't join at this time can still watch it. And so if there's no objection to that, we'll hit the play button and we'll get rolling. Hey, Christina.
There we go. So we're going to start off this meeting with some quick questions. We just want to get to know you guys a little bit more, understand your focuses and why you decided to join us for this evening. And so I'm going to share a poll here. The first poll has 2 questions on it. First, where do you reside? And who do you represent? And the who do you represent could be, it's a multiple choice question. So there's, if you're a resident, but you are also a business owner, or you're a resident and work for a nonprofit as well. So feel free to answer multiple questions there. Okay, it looks like we got everyone voted. There's 19 people. I'm going to share the results here. So most people are living in Greeley, so we're glad to see a lot of residents joining us today, as well as some board and commission members. Thank you for taking time. I know you're lots of virtual meetings these days, and also some city employees, as well as members of nonprofit organizations. Thanks, everybody. We're gonna do 2 more quick polls and then we'll get rolling with the presentation. So the next polls I'll launch is about your participation. So we want to know, how familiar are you with previous planning efforts that have been taking place in the city, such as the Parks and Trails Open Lands Plan, or the Great Outdoors Inspire Initiative, or the Comp Plan. Even, of course, the city does a variety of planning efforts, but those are the 3 main ones that we'll touch base on today. And then the second question is, how familiar are you with the city's natural areas, trails, or open lands? So we'll leave that open for a couple minutes, a couple seconds. A minute is a long time in the Zoom world. So got almost everyone to provide their input. And if you want to go ahead and put the chat, if you like work for a nonprofit or a firm or a business that you want to share with us, feel free to put that in the chat. Responding to that last question there, if you want to let us know more about yourself. Okay, so we got looks like almost everyone voted. So I will end that poll and share that with everybody here. So it looks like about almost half the group has participated in the PTAL, the Parks, Trails, Open Lands Plan before, and the comprehensive plan, and some other planning efforts. Great to see some engaged citizens, or maybe that's all the employees, we'll see. And then looks like people are somewhat familiar with the natural areas, trails, and open lands. So that's where we're gonna start today. And just kind of provide a focus area of the specific resources that we're talking about today. So turn it back over to Jeremy.
Thanks, Christina. And again, thank you for your interest. For those of you who weren't very familiar or only somewhat familiar with natural areas and trails, here's one way to think about it. Think about a gold necklace or a chain that runs down the Poudre River. And early on, it was simply a trail, a very narrow trail at that. Perhaps so narrow that it's too close to the river and the river took over in some parts. But over time, the city and its partners have been adding jewels to this necklace, these little emeralds that once were focused along the river, and now they weave through several neighborhoods. And so we've got natural areas, 26 of them, over 1,000 acres. We hit that 1,000-acre milestone this year. We're really excited about that. We also hit a 30-mile milestone for the trails within and connecting to those natural areas. That natural area trails, as we're defining it here, it doesn't include the side paths, the subdivision or homeowner association HOA trails, or the bikeways, bike lanes. It's just the trails within and adjacent to, connecting to natural areas. We're really excited about that milestone. And then there are these gemstones along this necklace of the parkland, places where you go for ball fields, special events, playgrounds. They're going to host large groups of people. And on the next slide, there's a wide variety of other open lands as well. Things like your school ball fields and playgrounds, the city's partners, like the Poudre Learning Center, the Greeley Country Golf Club, state wildlife areas like Broward, and other canals, transmission pipelines. Those can serve as trail corridors. They can serve for animal movement, and especially the creeks and streams that are often maintained by public works or homeowner associations have very important natural resource values. And lastly, if everything I've just mentioned is generally open to the public or at a neighborhood level, then this last category of privately owned conservation easements do protect important resource values, but are not open to the public in most cases. And if we look at this on the map, what that looks like is if you move down on the next slide, down the Poudre River, and let's just see how well Christina does in following my mind here. She's moving downstream, and with her cursor, she can stop at Signature Bluffs, which is a wonderful little stroll on natural surface trails, downstream to Cottonwood Bend and to Poudre Ponds. Poudre Ponds is temporarily closed here over the winter. It'll open again in the spring with some even nicer amenities and sport fishing once again. If you go upstream, up Sheep Draw, you pass through a variety of smaller natural areas like McCloskey Natural Area. And then if you go southeast down Fox Run, right, past the Youth Sports Complex, you keep heading south, you get to Josephine Jones Park, which has a great network of natural surface trails. And then over to the east to the Gateway Lakes Natural Area. And Gateway Lakes Natural Area is listed here as Homestead Park because it's a great integration of a park and a natural area all in one. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, and we intend it to be that way in some regards. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Another one, East Memorial on the far eastern side of the city, is another example. It's right next to Discovery Bay Pool and Wagon Tail Dog Park. So that's a quick tour of the areas that we're going to be focusing on. So again, parks, schools, easements, those all contributed to it, but we specifically want your feedback tonight on the 1,000 acres of natural areas in green and the natural area trails that are in dark green that we'll focus on. Okay, so with that in place, I'd like you to answer the question: how often do you visit a natural area or a trail? Would you say, using this poll, that you attend every day? You walk your dog, maybe at morning, evening. You do it at least once a week. You might only go once a month or once a year, or simply, you be honest, not as much as you'd like. And I think all of us have had different experiences this year during COVID, where we just need a respite. We need a place to go to let our minds relax and wander. And for many of us, natural areas have become that place. All right, I think we've got a pretty good vote here. And so let's just check out the results. Looks like a couple of you may have dogs and you go every single day, but the most, at least once a week. So that's great. Let's move to the need for strategy. What's brought this plan about? Justin?
Sorry, having trouble unmuting there. Yeah, and just to back up one step, sorry everyone, in our excitement to chat with you this evening, we failed to introduce ourselves. So Andy introduced me a little bit, but I'm Justin Sharton. I'm the superintendent of natural areas and trails, and working very closely with Christina and Jeremy at Logan Simpson, who are consultants on the project, and Karen Scopel, who's our environmental planner, who's also been integral in this process. So, why do we need a strategic plan, and why now? So, we are one of the newest, probably the newest program within the city of Greeley. While there's been great work being done to acquire the what's now over 1,000 acres and 30 miles of trail, we've only been in existence as a division for 2 years. So we really need to have that strategic planning policy foundation to move forward. And we currently do not have a dedicated funding source. Typically, open space programs within municipalities or counties, at least within Colorado, are typically funded through various means, but the most popular one is an open space sales tax. And so we're working on not only the strategy, but what do we have ahead of us with capital projects, land acquisition, and what might some of those big ticket items cost? And so looking forward financially as well. The next is that 34% of Greeley residents currently live outside a 10-minute walk to nature. And that's one of our major themes. It's become, I think, a pretty go-to theme in land use planning. Most planners will recite that to you as kind of the gold standard of equitable access to nature, is a 10-minute walk to nature without having to cross an arterial street. We are trying to look at this plan through a triple bottom line approach. So looking at not only the economic, but the social and the environmental bottom lines, and trying to balance all those as we move forward to do the best we can, looking at all those bottom lines. And then finally, as Jeremy alluded to, the COVID-19 pandemic has just really underscored the importance of parks, trails, and open space for the community. We were seeing, especially at the beginning of the COVID time in March and April, even though the weather was a little colder year over year, we were seeing 200 and 300 and 400% increases in our trail usage. And while that's waned somewhat, we are absolutely continuing to see above normal or average uses. And so I think a lot of folks are understanding and maybe newly finding trails and open spaces and natural areas as places to go and provide that respite and be outside and be away from, have that social distancing that we all are looking for these days. Go to the next slide there, please. Thank you. So This is our working version of our vision and mission statement. So the vision is pretty easy to recite. It's a community connected to nature. So that's our visual end state that we hope to get to, our aspirational end state. And I won't read the entire mission statement. I'll let you do that, but I will pull out those areas highlighted in green: equitably connecting residents to nature, and how do we do that? And that's by conserving, stewarding, and activating important lands within the community that have these particular values. Go to the next slide there. All right, so the poll, we just flashed that to you, so hopefully you got a chance to read that. But how well do you feel that the vision and mission represents the work that natural areas and trails should be doing in the community? So having just a quick look at that and maybe just a few seconds to digest it a bit. What do you think about that? Are we on the right track? Do you have some ideas that you can put in the chat for us? Do you not have an opinion either way? Could we back that? There was a request to show the slide again. Jeremy or Christina, whoever's running that, could. Thank you. All right, we've got 11 of 22 there. Let you have a few more seconds to ponder that.
Okay, maybe give it one more second. We got almost everyone voted. Okay.
All right.
Then we go ahead and end it here.
Great, thank you, Christina.
Share the results.
So I'm glad to see and I'm glad to hear that so far, even with that very short sort of exposure to that you feel like we're in the ballpark. I'm going to hold that person that said I have some ideas in the chat. I hope to see those. So thank you in advance for putting those in the chat. And then for those that you feel somewhat are we're on the right track, we'd love to hear comments from you as well. So either during the question and answer session toward the end of the presentation, or certainly feel free to throw those in the chat at any time. And thank you for your feedback on that. Okay. All right, Christina. Perfect. Thank you. So this 5-year strategic plan, this Get Outdoors Greeley 5-year strategic plan, does not happen in a vacuum. So this builds upon quite a bit of previous planning and policy foundation. So the Parks, Trails, and Open Lands Master Plan in 2016 is really the overarching document that's kind of the 30,000 foot document, and this brings that 5-year strategic planning, more specific and drilled down goals, objectives, and metrics that are laid out in the Parks, Trails, and Open Lands Master Plan. And then in 2017, there was a great Outdoors Colorado Get Outdoors Greeley Inspire initiative. So AGOCO at the time had an Inspire initiative where it was getting kids out into nature. And so Greeley was the beneficiary of a project funding for a project. So that report really gave us a lot of context on the what we're calling nature deficit areas within the community, or those areas outside that 10-minute walk to nature. And then finally, our comprehensive plan that was completed in 2018, the Imagine Greeley plan, provides a great community-wide sort of structure and framework to work from on the environmental side of preservation and wise use of our resources. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we are in the currently in phase 3 of the planning process. So we're in the for the month of November, basically. I guess we're now into December, just in the early part of December. We will be doing the virtual. Unfortunately, we were hoping to do it in person, but current restrictions did not allow that. So we're doing our virtual outreaches. So thank you for being here tonight again. We've presented to probably about 8 or 10 boards and commissions, and we have a handful of presentations remaining. And then we'll be presenting at a city council work session on January 8th and adoption on the 2nd of February. So we're right toward about the 3/4 way phase of this plan, and so we want to make sure that we've really gotten this correct. And so that's why we're really focusing in on the public engagement right now. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Karen, I believe.
Thank you, Justin. As Justin introduced me, Karen Scopel, I'm the environmental planner for the Natural Areas and Trails Division. And I know a lot of you on the screen, we've known each other for years, so this is an exciting step for us. So the vision for developing this strategic plan is, as Justin mentioned, to give us that 5-year strategic framework to coordinate management and acquisition, anything else that we can accomplish during this time frame within the city's long-range expected growth area, and potentially some of the surrounding areas if appropriate. Next slide, Christine. Thank you. So I think a couple times we've mentioned we've looked back at a lot of the work that the city has already done on a lot of things. One element that we looked at is through the Community Development Department has established a map showing areas that have some ecological sensitivity to them, whether could be the river corridors, could be wetlands, other areas. And so when a developer wants to come in and develop a property that isn't, is within one of these areas on this map, they have to go through a series of reports and steps to take reasonable measures to protect and enhance those areas, to set them aside for the values that we all have in those. And this might be critical wildlife habitat, populations of wildlife and native and unique plants, and some of our valuable natural features as well. So we're going to move on from that as we're going into this plan, but that's a tool that's used for development. Justin had mentioned one of our key things that we're looking at is, how easy is it for our residents to get to a natural area. This map, the bright yellow on here, shows areas that are currently within a 10-minute walk of a park or a natural area. But in addition, on this next slide, this one you'll see there's a lot less yellow on it. And this is, we went through an exercise through the Inspire initiative to actually score all of our sites, whether it was a park or a natural area, based on its nature experience, based on criteria that youth that we were working with at the time in that process told us they thought was important to them to have a quality nature experience. So this map shows where our community can reach areas that have an A or B score for nature experience. So you can see that we have some very significant gaps in the community for folks to get to those quality experiences. And the next map, or the next slide, Christina. Okay. So what we need to be looking at is where should we be putting our priorities in terms of conservation areas? And the city's already done some work through the Parks, Trails, and Open Lands Master Plan, and even a much older version of an open space plan to look at the kinds of areas that we should, probably be looking at. And, chief among those are our river corridors, such as our beloved Poudre River. We touched the Platte River, down there on the southeast side of town a little bit. Riparian corridors and greenways. So these would be the areas such as along Sheep Draw and other areas too that, aren't our primary rivers, but they provide those riparian corridors and greenways. Significant natural features such as the bluffs on the northwest side of town. Very, very unique, very special, very high habitat values and other sensitivity in there. We also think if from prior feedback from the community that looking at what we can do to preserve some agriculture uses in and around our community. We know that agriculture is a primary economic driver within Weld County. And so maybe there's some of those areas that we could look at working with those landowners to help them protect and preserve those areas. Views. We all love when we get that nice long view of Long's Peak off to the west. And maybe there's some areas that we need to look at preserving some land so that we can keep those views readily available to us. And community separators. Those of you that are familiar with Greeley know on the south side, Greeley and Evans, butt right up to each other. And unless you see the street sign, you don't know that you've left Greeley and entered Evans, or vice versa. But perhaps around the community, up around Windsor, Johnstown, Milliken, we should be looking at lands that we could acquire to provide some physical distinction between our communities in what we call community separators. And then what kind of areas can we look at to address the nature deficit that some of our community has, where they can't get to nature experiences? So those would be some other priority conservation areas that we would look at. We're currently going to be developing some criteria to use to analyze how we would, analyze sites and go from that. So that is still yet to come. And now I will turn it over to Christina.
Thanks, Karen. So in the planning process, we took all the input that we got from those previous planning efforts, as well as a steering committee over four different meetings, and to develop 6 goal areas. So 3 of them are highlighted on this slide here. And we developed 6 strategic goal priority areas. And then under these goal priority areas, there's about 6 to 8 detailed objectives under each of those areas. So I'll let you read those in the plan, but I wanted to highlight a couple. Under this sustainable funding is really about securing dedicated funding mechanisms for open space, but also leveraging partners and grant funding and other opportunities as well. Connections to nature is about acquiring land and also partnering with stormwater, school district, other divisions, other departments within the county, as well as within the city, to create these connections, whether they're a large open space or a corridor that provides a little bit of respite to the everyday lives. Then under stewardship, we have a lot of objectives about wildlife connections, river restoration, riparian corridor restoration, as well as developing a ranger program to make sure that our lands are being maintained and cared for every day. The other 3 are listed here. The goal areas are listed here, and community connections is about programming, creating volunteer programming, creating events to really allow the community to enjoy natural areas, trails, to learn about them, educating the community about where these areas are, how to access them, the importance of the open areas as well as trails, to really create champions of the lands as well. Operational excellence and capital planning are sort of the nuts and bolts behind all of the other goal areas. So operational excellence is really about maintenance, which is key to long-term financial and economic and ecological stability of the natural areas, because if you can maintain them over a certain period of time, there's less large replacements, less capital replacements, which is the next one. So maintaining an integrated planning process with the rest of the city to plan for the inevitable when we will need to replace lawnmowers and equipment for maintaining the areas, as well as benches and sign and like that kind of stuff, as well as the trails. So those are the 6 main goal areas that you'll see themes throughout this process. And I know I went through those kind of quickly And so we have one more poll question that I'm going to pull up, and I'll leave this slide up. So you can read those, and I'll toggle back to the first three as well. So we just kind of wanted to get more of an idea of what goal areas do you or your organization, who you represent today, is most important. Is it sustainable funding, connections to nature, stewardship, community connections, operational excellence, and capital planning? And a lot of these do overlap, and they're all interrelated. So there's no wrong answer. There's no right answer. We just wanted to get more feedback on why you're here tonight. So leave this open for a little bit. I'll toggle back to, here's the first three if you want to read the goal statements again. I always wondered, can you resend the poll?
If you can't resend it, maybe she could just answer in the chat.
Yeah, sorry, I don't see if I have the ability to do that, and it might be because I switched slides, or it got hidden on another page, or like it got hidden behind the presentation maybe.
There's still votes coming in. You're at 17 out of 20.
Okay. I think we'll end it here in a second. Oh, sorry, Barbara. Thanks for your input in the chat. I wish I could be able to relaunch it, but I feel like it would get rid of all of our answers. Okay, so we're gonna end the poll here, and it's a tie for sustainable funding and connections to nature. Whoops, I forgot to share the results. There we go. Thanks everybody for participating in that. So with any planning effort, it's important to make sure we have a way to measure our success. And so all of the goals and objectives that are outlined, as well as the action plan, which we'll get to in a second, we outlined 9 opportunities to measure success. And these are our metrics, and there's a lot more detail in the plan on the baseline and the target. So we set a baseline that we know today based on walkability, like Justin said, 34% of the community doesn't have a 10-minute quick access to nature. So that is one of our metrics that we hope to increase. Restoration metrics, amount of conserved land is an acres number. Satisfaction, every 2 years, the city does a poll, a community-wide survey. So similar to that, when you give your feedback generally on the city services, we would like to, ask more specific questions about natural areas and trails and understand how natural areas and trails is serving the community. Perceptions of safety, inclusivities in programming and leadership, as well as funding availability and self-rated health. And so Weld County does a health assessment also on a 2-year basis, and they track different types of metrics, such as different types of diseases, obesity, blood pressure, those types of things. And so we wanted to relate back how trails and natural areas are an opportunity to improve the overall community health, even though it's not the only factor in self-rated health. So those are the metrics. We know that there are a lot of metrics, but we kind of want to hear from you if we missed any. So go ahead and put those in the chat. If you think that we, you think if we have any other ones that you would like to see represented, we had a whole list. We had like 30 of them to start with. So we know that there's other ones out there, but wanted to focus on the ones that the city's natural areas and trails division could move the needle on. So if there's any other ones that you would like to see, please put those in the chat, or think ones that we should consider. And we'll move on to the action plan here with Justin.
Thank you, Christina. And we have seen that there have been a couple comments and questions in the chat, and we will, as we finish our presentation and then come back to the Q&A, we'll loop back to those. But if for some reason we don't get those, make sure that you bring those back to our attention so we can make sure that we address those. Thank you for those questions and comments. So we've got our goals, objectives, metrics, and then our action plan. And then our action plan is really the long sort of laundry list of projects that we need to move forward with, and that we'll try to move forward with in this 5-year scope of this plan. And so those include capital improvement projects. So think of new trail stretches, trail heads, those types of things. What we'll continue to work on our financial stability and work on mechanisms to fund not only our capital planning and our operations, but then land conservation as well, because that's an extremely important component of an open space program in a municipality. We'll continue to be working on policy on a variety of fronts. We just our city council just adopted the first natural areas and trails municipal code. So now we have a regulatory framework within there. So as we are able to build up our ranger program and other efforts, we're able to make sure that we've got regulations that can help make sure that the users are not only safe, but also that the natural resources are protected as well. Programming. So Christina touched on programming. And so, what are the areas such as volunteer programming, environmental education, and, biology and botany, and how the various systems work in our natural areas. Certainly, we'll continue to be doing a lot of planning, management plans for each of our properties, and I believe we're within probably the next few years going to go back and update our PTAL plan, or our Parks, Trails, and Open Lands Master Plan. So that'll continue, and then obviously one of the major components of an open space program is land conservation activities. And currently, we don't have that dedicated funding source, but we're doing our best to. We're in negotiations with a handful of different landowners to do as much conservation, land conservation as we can. And so I think the next slide there, Christina, if you wouldn't mind. So this is so again, much more detail in the actual plan, but here's an illustration of some of the projects that are within the scope of the next 5 years. There's a number of projects that are ongoing right now or are just about to kick off that aren't shown in here, including our work that we're really excited about in the East Greeley natural area. But this is a sort of a highlight of our action items in the next 5 years. And I'll pull out a couple examples. Christina, the next one. So the first one is that I just saw that just went away, but is the Larson Trail connection. Thank you. Larson Trail to Poudre River. This is an exciting opportunity to take an existing project that's just about to kick off this winter, the continuation of the number 3 ditch trail from currently 35th Avenue, and we'll take it west, sort of northwest to the connection with the existing Larson Trail. And then this project will make that final connection to the Poudre Trail at right around Rover Run Dog Park. And this is probably a 2022, 2023 project at the moment. Next slide, please. So we've got a large acquisition in negotiation currently in the extreme western portion of the growth management area, and so we're working with the town of Windsor on that, and we're excited about the possibility of having that be a regional recreational open space. There's also a lot of shortgrass prairie habitat there, and about a quarter mile of river frontage of the Poudre River as well. In addition, there's a lot of recreational opportunities and a future potential connection to the Poudre River Trail from this site as well. So a lot of opportunities in that area. Really excited about that project. And the next one there. And the Poudre River Restoration near 95th. This is an exciting project this is a river restoration project that we're working with the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed, which is a great nonprofit funded by the city of Greeley, city of Fort Collins, and other funders that really looks at watershed planning and restoration at that watershed scale, which needs to be done. So great partnership there. We just hired a consultant, just awarded the contract to a consultant. We'll be doing a 30% design in 2021 for Reach 13, which Karen could rattle off the distance, but a good chunk of the river just west of 95th and east of 257. Again, kind of in that area where we have the other land acquisition project going on. So those are just a couple of highlights of some various projects that we have in this 5-year scope. There's many more that you can dig into in the plan, but we wanted to just give you an example of a handful of those.
Another example, Justin, was a question that came up in the chat by Deb asking about ditch number 3.
Yes.
That might be a good time to answer a question or two that are geographic. Could you
Sure.
point out for all of us, generally, where is ditch number 3? And is that on the radar?
It is. Karen, I'll let you talk about the Broadview Acres project.
Okay, thank you. So we recently received a grant to build another section of what has been called the Broadview Acres Trail, which is between east of 35th Avenue, and it kind of goes diagonally up to 4th Street, just west of 23rd Avenue. We have a grant now to build the section west of 35th Avenue along the number 3 ditch to the Larson Trail, as we mentioned, as well as another short connection from 4th Street up to Madison Elementary School. As far as the number 3 ditch goes, through most of town, it's really not accessible to the public because it's right in people's backyards. So I don't know that we'll be able to do much beyond that, but there might be some opportunities on the farther east side of town before it goes back to the Poudre River.
Thank you, Karen. And I might add that even without public access, the ditch system in a suburban community provides great wildlife habitat and connectivity. Probably not when there's water going through it, but certainly we value those ditch systems for not only the water delivery that happens, but also the wildlife connectivity that's so important in the community. So we're very aware of that, and we'll work with various ditch companies and through planning processes to make sure that we continue to support ditch preservation through town.
Great. Justin, another question was asked by Morgan Kidder regarding how this plan requires or doesn't require developers to include large areas of open space within their development, often that's described as a dedication requirement, or in the subdivision process, the master plan requires open space. A related one is the trail dedication standards. And so, Justin, would you be able to touch on both?
Sure.
Those?
Yeah, so currently within this plan, there's no change in dedication. I do believe Brad Mueller's on the meeting here, and he could speak much more eloquently than I have, or that I could on this. So currently no change in that, at least for this planning, this scope of this plan. And we will be engaged in partnership with our community development partners, Brad and his team, as we move forward opportunities to update land use language, and I don't know what that will look like, but we'll certainly be involved in that. But neither the trail dedication fee or amounts, nor the amount of open space required will be changing at all within the scope of this plan.
Brad, did we get that right? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm happy to elaborate a little bit as well. So land dedication is really a function of the subdivision code, which is part of the development code, as Justin alluded to. This plan is really a strategy to implement various aspects of natural areas. The subdivision regulations really speak to formal parks, and so there is land dedication for formal parks, which may have natural area characteristics. It certainly wouldn't preclude that possibility, but it's really designed to maintain the per capita amount of parkland the same as we get a growing population, so that we maintain the same rough acreage of more formal parks, generally speaking, as the population increases through residential subdivisions being built. The open lands has always been a non-linear connection, if you will, to population, because natural lands in particular have unique characteristics and unique values that are community-wide that don't translate easily from acreage to acreage. And so it may function as a corridor protection, as community separator, as connectivity, those types of things. In addition to the land dedication, there are in lieu fees that are required for the building of parks. So that's going to build the equipment as well as some trail amenities. So that's where that kind of comes into play.
Great, thanks, Brad. Julie asked a similar question about an open space bank that developers could use similar to wetland banks. And thinking about banks, Fred Otis asked about sustainable funding. So I'm going to come to that in just a moment. What this map also shows, before I move on to the next slide, was Heidi's point that there's a lot of these brown bike and pedestrian connections that don't necessarily connect to a final destination. They're definitely in progress. And so we're excited to have in yellow those high priority future trails, this 5-year plan saying, well, let's try to make that connection happen within the next 5 years. It takes years, decades for the Poudre Trail to connect all the way up to Fort Collins and Bellevue, 30 miles to the west. And it takes years to get these connections in. But there's definitely a commitment. If there's a trail that's missing on this map, this is exactly why we're having this conversation about the next 5 years. So please use the chat, send us an email, and in a moment, I'll show you the online version of the plan. So you can drop little comment bubbles in the specific missing links that you'd like us to do. So with that in mind, let me show you on the next slide how to comment on this. We've been really fortunate to not only have your participation, but also Colorado Parks and Wildlife, UNC, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Youth and Family Connections, the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed, Will County. I could keep going on, right? The Trust for Public Land, the Poudre Learning Center, Poudre River Trail Corridor, and I'm sure I've missed some there. But that's our steering committee. They've been terrific, but we still need more feedback. We think that we're probably close to the bullseye here, but not right on target until we hear this. So if you were to punch in this hyperlink, greeley.com.gov, natural area and trails, okay? And I'm gonna share my screen real quick to just show you what that looks like. And what you'll see here is the city's website. This is their homepage, right? If you come to activities, drop down to natural areas, it brings you here a great web page, and we're always hungry for photos, by the way. So if you've got a photo that you love of one of your special places, please send it to us, and it may just appear in the plan if you'd like it to. Current conditions, it'll tell you about what's open, closed right now, maintenance, etc. Projects coming up. There'll be information here about that ditch number 3, for example, as that continues to gain traction. How to get involved. A great way to get them to understand it is to use that Explore Greeley map. and there'll be photos and locations, trail connections, especially if you're tired of walking the same block every day during COVID. But most importantly, that last tab, Get Outdoors Greeley, and click on any of these links. It takes you to this interactive plan. And this is the preferred way to give us your specific feedback on the document. Okay, I'll give you a quick tutorial on how to use this. If this window is too small for you, you can increase it, all right? Or you can zoom in and out. You can jump to different pages, and you can also download it, right? So then you can have your own PDF that you can flip through and make suggestions. But what's great about this website is it gives you a way to see other people's comments and to add to your own. So going back to that idea about sustainable funding that Fred was asking about, you click on financial futures, and this will tell you more about some of the constraints and opportunities that are facing the program. For example, that of the largest 20 cities in Colorado, 17 of them have some sort of dedicated open space funding source. And we can compare that to other communities like Fort Collins, Cheyenne, and Santa Fe. And Steve Jobs, by clicking on this little comment bubble, he's still alive, by the way, is with us in spirit. He says this is very telling, right? Very significant to see that similarly populated with student communities, that really doesn't have a dedicated funding source, a small budget compared to others, and you begin to see it with the miles of trails, 30 compared to 43 all the way up to 172. And same with acres, they're looking at 4 to 10 times more open space than Greeley has. So again, what you do is you click on comment, and then you can click on here anywhere, and you can add a new comment. Okay, you can also click on one, and on my part, I can reply and let you know how we address that. But you can also give an up or down, like I like that or I don't. And it's really helpful for us to see others weigh in on their comments. So again, that's how we encourage you to comment, by going to the city's website, natural areas, and then this link. So it's a new tool. We hope that you can find that it being very functional. With that, I'd like to go back to the PowerPoint. And so I'll let Christina share her screen, and we're going to answer some of your questions as we wrap up. And so how could you continue to be involved? We're going to have, or maybe I have it right here. You're probably looking at my screen. So I'll just share that for simplicity. Okay. Great. We've got some additional meetings coming up. If family or friends are more comfortable speaking in Spanish, we have 2 there. We'd like to get all of your comments back by December 13th. And our goal is to use Christmas and the month of January to put together a final plan. You'll see that posted again on the website, and then you can review it and see how your changes were incorporated. If you'd like, by joining this, we'd be happy to send you an email with when that plan is available. So the last slide again is to emphasize we want those comments by December 13th. Let's answer a couple more questions then, and by the way, I see that Christina put in the chat the link as well there for you. Okay, so now's a great time for any verbal questions. If you want to come off mute, feel free to. You can raise your hand and we'll call on you. But we've got a couple more here in the chat. So,
Jeremy, I thought I could answer one Samantha had about the East Memorial neighborhood.
please do.
So we are currently in design phase for phase 1 of the East Memorial Natural Area. We've had this about a 10-acre piece of land for a number of years, but it's just been a vacant field. And thanks to a grant from the Community Health Foundation, we are going to be able to do phase 1. We've spent the last year and a half, thereabouts, 2 years probably, working with the residents in that neighborhood to get their ideas of what they'd like to see. And so we now have a design firm creating the construction plans for us, and hope to go to construction sometime next year on that. So we are working on that. In addition, there will also be some nice improvements to Balsam Park, the one that's a sports field right now. It will get a nature playground and some picnic areas and things as well. So we have some things coming, Samantha, and if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm excited for it. Like I said in my comment, I've been going all over Greeley to natural areas, and to have one in my backyard will be awesome.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Julie, did you have a question?
No, I just had put in the comments about open space banking, similar to like wetland banking, so that instead, I mean, I think it's still important that developers set aside open space on their own projects. I was wondering if the city has been looking at maybe doing some open space banking so that developers could contribute partially to like a fund that would help actually purchase larger pieces of property and contiguous pieces of open space within the city. I don't know if we've ever talked about that as a city.
Well, I'll take a first crack at that, Julie. Thanks. And I like your Christmas tree in the background there. Very festive. You know, I guess what I would say is we're not contemplating that at the moment. Certainly, as you well know, that's functionally kind of how our trail development fees work. And currently, we don't have any sort of fee or as you call it, an open space bank, or maybe, I don't know if this is close enough to what you're thinking, but like a TDR, transfer development rights model. So, I mean, I think it's a possibility. I've had a little bit of experience with TDRs, which is, you know, maybe not exactly what you're talking about here, and pros and cons to a lot of those. Larimer County uses that or used that, and they've shifted to a different model. So short answer, no, we're not contemplating that at the moment, but I'd be interested to chat with you about that idea in the future. So
yeah, I think that would be great. The only other thing I wanted to mention is my group within the city of Greeley, the engineering group, and some of the planners are reading The Last Child in the Woods. And I know I've talked to Justin about that. So this conversation is timely for us, but we'd love to be influencers on some of the development that's coming in so that we do have great connections to natural areas and those kinds of things. I think we can be creative. Great.
Thank you, Julie. We appreciate your support.
Yeah, and go ahead, Justin.
I'm sorry, Jeremy. So while I'm talking, there was I think it was Adrian that had mentioned a question about sort of vegetation management at Poudre River Ranch, and I just and we can certainly talk more about this, but I just wanted to let you know that we're in contact. I think Bob Hendren was on the call. I don't know if he's still on there. He's one of the HOA presidents, and then we also work with the master HOA quite a bit. Unfortunately, we don't prune or manage vegetation for aesthetics. Certainly for public safety at times, but you know, a natural area's purpose is really to allow the natural vegetation to really be restored. And at the Poudre River Ranch subdivision specifically, the willows that you mentioned, the coyote willow that you mentioned, is a very important role. Has a very important role not only ecologically but also for erosion control and other things. So again, we're happy to discuss that more with you, but I wanted to address that question.
Good, thanks. And I came back to this page for regarding Last Child in the Woods. Great book. And the section of the plan that speaks to that specifically is connections to nature. So you'll see that goals and objectives around connections to nature, as well as community connections. And there's also specific actions for that as well. Another question that was posted is there an effort to work with the city of Evans and Will County to connect the Platte River corridor? Great question. So I'm going to come to this map, and Karen or Justin, would you like to answer that?
Sure, I can give one example. The short answer is yes. We are currently with the city of Evans in negotiations with Colorado Parks and Wildlife to convey a property that they currently own that they don't have the functionality for any longer to the city of Evans and city of Greeley, and so that is going to be a really great anchor property both for access, for river protection, restoration, and trail corridors from Evans's Riverside Park. So that's an example, but there'll be many more efforts in the future to work in the South Platte corridor and not only in the Poudre corridor.
And maybe Fred, he responded to that comment, but maybe he'd like to say something as well. Or not.
Okay.
So what Fred is on the board of the Poudre River Trail, and there has been a master plan to continue the Poudre Trail east and connect to the South Platte Trail for a number of years. And they're in the process of dusting that off and relooking at it and trying to update it to start moving that direction.
Thank you, Karen. I found my unmute button.
Oh, good. Well, feel free to add anything else that I didn't catch. Sorry.
Well, the Poudre board is complementary to what's going on with the open space. We're working together and looking at new things that the trail board can do, as well as trying to help out every way we can with this open space effort. But it's all going to depend on money. In my opinion, we need to be looking at how to get that funding approved, or the other goals won't be very accomplishable. So I think we need to start really studying the funding mechanism for this and trying to figure out how to get that sales tax initiative put together so it has a chance.
Amen.
Thank you, Fred. And as he mentions, the Poudre River Trail Corridor board has been an indispensable partner, and we're excited about some of the areas that they're looking at going east of Greeley currently. So, and one thing I'd mention, and I would also echo Fred's comments on the financial piece of it. We have worked with a great partner in the Trust for Public Land. They are a national land trust that does a number of things. One of which they do is conservation finance, and so we've partnered with them on a feasibility study for the community of Greeley to look at a number of mechanisms to fund to open space, and everything from property taxes, open space sales taxes, even marijuana taxes, even though that's not currently allowable within the city of Greeley. So a really broad spectrum of potential funding sources, in addition to grants, private partnerships, donations, all those kinds of things. So we are poised and ready to move forward with that. We have a pretty solid capital replacement budget and a projected 25-year land acquisition budget. So we're really ready. City Council has been very supportive to date, but they did want us to move forward with the strategic plan first and get that adopted as that policy platform before we move forward with any sort of potential ask of the voters for any sort of funding mechanism.
Good. Richard?
Oh, I just said,
Richard, did you have a question?
no, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
the sustainable funding or a tax initiative, we're kind of pretty much down the line from our peers, communities around us. And I think it'd be a wonderful thing to work with.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. All right, I think we've covered a lot of ground together. And if there's more questions, we'd be happy to stay on. And we might go back to Larry's question. In fact, Larry, you might unmute yourself, but if others begin to drop off, here's the ask. Please share the link, greeleygov.com, natural areas, to link to that online plan that I was showing, and take the time to jump to the portions of the plan that you are most interested in. Use that comment so that we can make sure to capture those feedback. We want to hear from everybody. And again, thank you for coming. And we lament that we can't be with you in person. We would love to see your faces. Those of you that have come to love COVID casual address, and if your camera's turned off, I'm talking to you. we know there's benefits to these virtual meetings as well. So let's go to Larry's question next. And again, if anyone else needs to jump off, thank you so very much. Larry, would you like to pose a question verbally? You had a couple really great comments throughout.
Well, back to the perception of safety. I think that perception word is a pretty potentially damaging word. And so just say safety. And then I made a comment about side channel drainages to floodwater, or not even floodwater, but runoff, detention, and retention basins in the city of Greeley, and getting those active again. You look out at the Shark's Tooth area, there's a couple of old side channels that were cut off years and years and years ago, over 100 years ago, probably by agriculture in the ditches. And those side channel drainages, both on the north side and the south side of the river, need to come back and become active and functional again and run back to the river as part of that process, obviously, to make sure that the water is cleaned up so that it's acceptable to enter back into the river, but do a little bit better job on detention, retention, and runoff return along the entire stretch of the Poudre River.
I think a great thought. You know, Justin, we talked about the storm drainage and the opportunities that could be there.
Well, and you can also, in addition to the ecological function and then the watershed function, you also, you know, they're obvious, as you all know, trail corridors. And so they all fit well together in the scheme.
Yeah, thanks, Larry, for those comments, and I appreciate that. On the safety one, I think that's maybe an easier response. So delve into the metrics a little bit and see what you think. Perception of safety, right? That it's either safe or it isn't. What that really reflects back to is questions in the biannual community survey about how safe do you feel in these sorts of areas. But the actual safety is extremely important as well. So we'll be looking at both. You know, one other thing that we're thinking about is, and I'm not going to be able to rattle off what the acronym means, but CEPTED, and coming from a law enforcement background, you may be aware of this as well, is designing with safety in mind. And so the example that I always use, you know, spending some time before Collins, the CSU campus where I went to school, there's a long stretch between the dorms and kind of the student union, and it's lit very well. There's a couple emergency phones, you know, there, but there's been a few incidents that have happened late, 3 in the morning. And so though the perception is safe, the actual safety and the perception of safety differs. And so those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at. Do we want to make people feel overly safe, even though when it's not a safe condition, but also looking at the hard data of are there accidents in these certain areas? Have there been incidents, those types of things. So I appreciate that. And hopefully there's some more information in there, but if you have additional comments in the metrics, definitely let us know. On the stormwater piece, we have cultivated, I think, over the past couple of years, a really strong relationship with our stormwater division, and I think there's been some turnover there and some new folks that have come through that. So there's a couple of projects that are in the development review process right now that we're doing just what you're mentioning. So looking at the natural drainages, looking at more sort of bioengineered solutions versus concrete and riprap and those kinds of things. So we're definitely trying to move in that direction, but the stormwater division is in a very similar boat to us. They've got a very long backlog of deferred maintenance and capital projects they need to work on. But I think the spirit and the vision is there. And so I'm really excited about opportunities to do that in the future as that interface between natural areas and residential and commercial development happens.
Justin, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Please do, Julie. Yeah, please do.
Thanks. I actually messaged Larry kind of separately from the whole group to let him know that EDR, the Engineering Development Review Group that I'm in, we're doing all the review on all these new projects. And I have a couple of my staff that are really, really interested in looking at how we're designing stormwater facilities in our city and looking at some really good models and pilot projects that have been done in other parts of the state. And we've done a couple of presentations with stormwater to kind of share some of the information that we've gotten, but we're also participating in their criteria code update so that we can encourage those things in our criteria when we have new development. And we have some really large developments that are getting ready to move forward in the city. And I just think there's a lot of opportunity to not put things into big concrete infrastructure necessarily when we have natural topography and natural areas that can be actually amenities for these developments, and could actually pencil for the developers themselves to get premiums on lots that are adjacent to these kinds of things. And it's, there's good examples of that all over the state and in lots of other states too. So yeah, I think all of our groups at the city are really working towards that, and have a lot of staff that are really interested in looking at storm drainage in a more cohesive and natural way versus just putting everything in an enclosed pipe or big huge detention ponds and concrete swales and things like that. So anyway,
I just happened to be looking this afternoon at nrcsolutions.org, and they have a really good bunch of information and links in on that kind of stuff. And we can just do it a whole lot better. When I drive down 4th Street and look at that new development and that concrete dump into the sheep draw, that's just a painful one.
Yeah, unfortunately, that one was done with, the engineering was done on it several years ago, even though it's just being constructed. But yeah, we hear you.
Okay.
We tried to change it, but couldn't get that far. So
if I can help in any way, I would love to. And then also out west, as that PUD between 83rd and 95th Avenue comes to fruition, those, like I said, those drainages need to be brought back to intact, and there's opportunity to run them into swales on the Poudre Learning Center and really do some cool stuff.
I also wanted to touch on one more idea behind the perception of safety as well, is we probably have a lot of our residents who may not go out on our trails or our natural areas because they've never used anything like that. They've never been exposed to it. And so they don't feel safe, even though it may be safe because they're not familiar with it. So that's another place that perception of safety plays in, that we can try to address through education and experiences that we can provide to the community to let them become more familiar and develop that sense of safety out there.
And back to what Justin said, a big part of that comment for me is the previous retired cop and having to dealt with lawsuits with words like perception of safety, and then lawyers call you to task for it. So it's either safe or it's not when you're a cop.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Ruth, did you have something to share?
No.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. Again, thanks for being here. Let's go to the next question. If we're there, Andy, any last thoughts, or we'll jump to Fred's comment?
Fred Ortiz just added a comment about Water and Sewer Department is working on upping its game on its non-potable water system. Is there opportunity for complementary open space? I will tell you that we've got a very, very strong partnership with the Water and Sewer Department. They've been incredible in looking for alliances on not only non-potable water systems, but also preserving open spaces along the Poudre corridor and other areas that can be an advantageous kind of a system for the whole city. So I think that we're working collaboratively with the Water and Sewer, not only on open space, but on other areas as well. We're working on a project right now with the Boomerang Links Golf Course. That's a very, very strong collaborative workforce for non-potable. So we're trying to look at not only just developed areas, but non-developed open space natural areas. And I think it's great, and we're working that direction, Fred.
Agreed, yeah.
Good. Fred, anything else there?
No, I just want to be issue aware.
Absolutely. No, what water and sewer are really strong advocates for what we're doing, and they've actually helped advance this strategic planning process. They were some of the early adopters of this. So thank you to Sean and Adam in water and sewer for helping kick this process off. So absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna wrap things up, and Justin, you might have some closing thoughts. But again, thank you so very much for everyone who participated and for sharing the plan with your neighbors.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate that your time this evening. We understand to be on the screen for yet another hour and a half is at times a painful process. So we so appreciate your time. We so appreciate your contributions. I would encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to delve through the plan and add your comments. The more representative that we can be in this plan of community comments, the more impactful it can be, and the less blind spots that we can have. So thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you to Jeremy and Christina and Karen for leading this.